Okay, we back with another Take 'em on One podcast, but this time we're gonna do something different today. We're gonna do Black August history with aka G, aka Maarifa. So let us know about G and how Maarifa came about, and where did you get Maarifa?
Mic a little closer to you. Right here. Yeah, you can get going. Okay. So the history right behind G, right? Usually you get a nickname that is derived from your birth name, right? It's usually the initials that your first and last name start with and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. So G is not a nickname. G is more like an alias. And G is short for G-Sick, GSIC, Game Solid in Cali. That was a name that I had got during the days when I was rapping, right? Mm-hmm. Rapping back in the days as a, adolescent teenager, right? Mm-hmm. I got into the rap scene. And so, part of my personality and my persona and my whole attitude and character was, people know me for being dumbass drunk, you know what I'm saying, and high, you know what I mean, those days and shit. And so they were like, boy, you sick. You know what I'm saying? Motherfuckers be like, boy, that's cause I used to be so on, motherfuckers be like, man, you sick, man. You know what I'm saying? So I got the name. It turned into G Sick. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And so G Sick was cool. I used to spell it G and hyphen SICK, right? But I was like, that didn't have enough meaning for me. So I turned it into acronym into GSIC, which meant Game Solid in Cali. You know what I mean? So I was rolling with that for a long time, and throughout my street days, when I say street days, I mean the days where I was, just roaming in the streets. You know how that is, you know what I'm saying? Rapping and trying to do my studio thing or whatever, you know what I mean? I would go by G-Sig. Everybody knew me by G-Sig shit, you know what I mean? And, the Maarifa thing came about during my days in prison. I had ended up getting sentenced to 10 years in prison out here in Santa Rita, Alameda County for 211 robbery, where I'm at. And so I got sent to the pen. And before I went to the pen, right, I had been like a non-intellectual. When I say non-intellectual, I wasn't into reading books. I wasn't into working out. That wasn't really my thing. My thing was the whole content and theme of my personality before, I had got woke up was, just slimy, getting high and trying to do whatever else I could to get by and survive. You know what I'm saying? The dishonest dollars was my whole pursuit. You feel me? And, the Maarifa thing came about years after I landed in prison. And so 2011, June 29, 2011, you remember, I had been arrested. After that, I was sitting in Rita, facing 54 to life for some robberies. That was my exposure. The deal ended up being 10 years after I got him down from 12 years. And during that time in jail, that experience was enough to kind of like shake me awake. Because at that point, I seen things. Life, it got serious right there. Because when you in the streets, and when you ripping and running in the streets, and your mind is clouded and you distorted. Some things aren't that apparent. Some things aren't that serious or clear to you. You know what I mean? And that right there, that was a sobering experience. And so throughout that first year in jail, when I realized that I wasn't coming home and I wasn't coming back to see my my young ones for a long time, I decided to start educating myself, and I got introduced to this book called "The New Jim Crow: Mass Incarceration in the Age of Color Blindness" by Michelle Alexander. Mm-hmm. And in that book, they talked about the systematic and systemic things that a lot of our people had to face, especially those of us who were labeled criminals, who bear the stigma of being a criminal and a felon and things like that, and how we have received unfair and unjust treatment when it came to the judicial system and the litigation process. Facing criminal charges and not having fair representation or competent legal defense attorneys and things like that, right? And so that book really opened my eyes up to a lot of the social injustices and a lot of the social, societal, environmental factors that before I had read that book, I was unaware of, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it exposed me to a lot of things that sobered me up and kind of checked me a little bit. It shook me awake, you know what I'm saying? Because before it was like, we living and we a product of our environments and stuff like that, and we doing what we know how to do best, mm-hmm. and that's survive by however we know how to survive. Right. By whatever means we got to try to do that, mm-hmm. whether it's robbing, stealing, selling drugs, and everything else that we learned. Mm-hmm. And I ain't saying everybody turned out like that. Right. You know what I'm saying? But most of us being a product of our environment, you know what I'm saying? Being immediate productions of the influences that we learned and experienced growing up, had to live like that, because that's the only way we knew how to live. So this book kind of like, it pointed out a lot of things to me and brought to my attention. It made me realize that there was a lot of things that I didn't know about myself and about my environment, you know what I mean? And at that point, I wasn't that educated in Black history. I wasn't that educated in the social, historical, political, cultural aspects of, our experience. You know what I'm saying?
About how old were you at this time?
Our heritage. I was about 25 and a half, you know what I'm saying, when I first went to jail. Well, not when I first went to jail. I had been to jail before that, but this is my first time really facing big charges. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so this is the time where I didn't see the streets again for another almost 10 years. Right. 9.5, almost 10 years. You know what I mean? So this was my real, what you call, wake-up call. You know what I mean? And so this book by Michelle Alexander called The New Jim Crow: Mass Incarceration in the Age of Color Blindness pointed out a lot of things to me, bro. And it changed my whole perspective. It was the onset of the transformation onto a different mentality. From one mentality to the next.
I think that was his question. How old was you when you start looking into that book? Like
21?
Yeah, I was about 25. I think I was about 6 months in the jail at that time. Okay, you know what I'm saying? And I was in a chaplain service, and this brother came through, and he was sitting in a chaplain service in the multi-purpose room. Anybody who'd have been through Santa Rita know what the multi-purpose room is. You know what I'm saying? And so we were sitting in. We used to go to the multi-purpose room for chaplain services and shit like that. To hear dude come in and give sermons and talk about the Bible and all kind of other stuff, you know what I mean? And so he told us about this book. He was like, man, y'all need to read this book. You know what I'm saying? This is a good book. And I had at the time, my girl, which my kid's mother, I was like, man, order me this book and order me a dictionary. It was the first dictionary I ever bought myself. So when I bought that dictionary and that book, at the time I started reading that book, it was like every other sentence I was having to open up that dictionary and look up a word, because that's how, lowly or uneducated I was at the time. I had a very, very poor vocabulary at that time, you know what I'm saying? Right. And so, I started reading that book. By the time I got through reading that book, I was able to reread that book and not pick up the dictionary not one time. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, that book really sparked in me a whole new interest for learning, stuff like that. So, make a long story short, right? I ended up going to prison. And I ended up, getting sentenced and finally getting to prison. And after about 5 years in prison, 2015, I ran across this book called Solid Dad Brother by George Jackson. And man, this when I finally read this book, it was like I didn't know if it was what I wanted to hear or what I needed to hear. But I had never heard before that time. I had never heard a brother articulate the social material factors of his time so well. I had never heard a brother as eloquent as George Jackson, and it felt like I can directly relate to him as far as what I was going through on a systemic level, what I was going through with the criminal justice system. You know what I'm saying? The unfair and unequal treatment and everything else that we was experiencing and stuff like that. And so I ended up crossing paths with other brothers, right? And these brothers was articulate. They was sharp, they was hard, and they was intelligent, they was aggressive at the same time. And that's what I gravitated to. You know what I mean? It was the intellectual aspect of them, then it was the aggressive side too. You could tell they was, you know what I'm saying, they was gangsters, they had all that up in them, you know what I'm saying? They had been from different walks of life, down South California, you know what I'm saying, Bay Area, you know what I'm saying, the town, whatever, you know what I mean? But it was something different about them, slightly different. It was this ism about them that I was attracted to. You know what I mean? And it felt very familiar. Because I had always been attracted to the Panthers. The Black Panthers. Growing up as a young one, I always told myself, man, I wish I could be a part of something like that. I always wanted to be a part of the Panthers. You know what I'm saying? Even though they was defunct at the time when I was growing up, the Panthers was no longer as an organization and political movement in existence. Right. You know what I'm saying? You know, they had been dismantled and disrupted by the feds. You know, the COINTELPRO counterintelligence program under the directorship of J. Edgar Hoover and all that type of shit, right? You know what I'm saying? So, but these brothers that I ran across up in there, man, they gave me a lot of good guidance. And the things that they educated me about, kind of it helped start me on a whole new path. And it was lessons that I would never forget to this day. Conversations that I had with certain brothers that I can remember verbatim. You know what I'm saying? Word for word, lesson for lesson, jewel for jewel. You know what I mean? And so when I started to learn about our history, how certain religions had been imposed on us, and they had stripped us of our original religions and spirituality and things like that, of our names and everything else. I started to read books by Lerone Burnett called Before the Mayflower, George, Amosin Wilson, Dr. Bobby E. Wright talk about the psychopathic racial personality and all that. And, Frances Cress Wilson, you know what I mean? She wrote the ISIS papers. Right. And all these books, man, was like, whoa, it was like, man, it was so much knowledge. It was like, it almost hurted my eyes. It was like a person that had been living in the dark for so long, and you finally expose them to light. It's like, oh shit, right? That too hurts. Much. Right. But it was like too much, and so it enraged me for a minute. You know what I'm saying? It kind of made me a little angry, right? And it made me so angry to the point to where it's like, man, did y'all see this shit? I started to get in arguments with motherfuckers who didn't know about this. Right. Like, kind of like taking it out on them, not knowing that it ain't their fault. We was all like that at one time. I was like, I was like that not too long ago. You know what I'm saying? And now I'm learning it, but it's like I'm eager to share it. And so I started learning about the restoration of, African identity, African dignity, self-respect, self-love, and I started also learning about self-alienation, this post-traumatic slave syndrome and complex, these theories and perspectives about psychology on a social historical level, that how it applied to us. You know what I'm saying? And how the double consciousness, which is a theory that was coined by Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. And you know what I mean? These things like that. So it started expanding my understanding about the social phenomena or the social factors, things that we weren't really able to explain or articulate at first. You know what I'm saying? So these things had becoming more and more apparent, evident, and clear now that I was being able to put myself through the educational process. you know what I'm saying, through the discipline of being able to actually sit down and take the time to learn these things that I couldn't do before when I was living that past life, distorted, you know what I mean, in my, constantly, I was doing everything, anything. And it was an overindulgence. You know what I'm saying? It was like I was a compulsive user and shit like that. So reading and doing shit like that, exercising, practicing good health, and was the last thing I was trying to do back in those days. Right. And so this is what brought about my understanding of the purpose in the reason and the meaning behind name changes is what brought about the Maarifa thing. Mm-hmm. Somebody was like, bro, it's a part of your transformation is to adopt an African name. And you can change that legally, or it can be your, you know what I'm saying, just a name that you apply to yourself and you use to, you know what I'm saying, for people to identify you or to address you with. And so the story about my real name, you know what I'm saying, which is Fabian, you know what I'm saying? My mama, I was like, and this is what made me put a lot of time into naming my children these days. But she told me, and I love my mama to death. That's my partner, my friend, my comrade, my everything, man. She got my back right or wrong, man. The mom. She's the fool. Yeah, she would move for her family, man. Right. You know what I'm saying? She always taught me to mind my business. You know what I'm saying? and she, you know what I mean? So, and that's one of the reasons why them boys don't even waste time talking to me when they got me in the interrogation room, because they know I don't talk. My mama told me to mind my business. You know what I'm saying? My mama don't like snitches. But anyway, anyway, man, sure. Mama, but when mama tell me the story about the reason why she named me Fabian, she said, I named you Fabian because I was in love with a white rock star dude named Fabian. I said, Mom, why you tell me that? But anyway, man, so, you know, when I adopted the name Maarifa, I thought about what it meant to me. And Maarifa is Swahili, but it's derived from Arabic, and it means knowledge and life. Mm-hmm. I like striving for knowledge and life. I'm not, when I say the name, it's not a title that's saying that, oh, well, I have all the knowledge and I have all the light, but what it's saying is I like to strive for knowledge. I like to learn. Right. You know what I'm saying? I'm an autodidactic. Mm. You know what I mean? That's like a self-taught. I don't owe it all to myself. Right. But you know, I love it these days. That's, you know.
When did you change your name? How old were you when you changed?
Well, I was about 30.
All right. Okay.
When I adopted that name, Maarifa, I was about 30 years old.
Right. That's real shit. That's nice too. Real commendable right there.
Yeah. That was that was the year I learned about Black August. That was the year that I learned about 2015. That was the year that I learned about a lot of different, you know, things that kind of changed that helped to change my mentality.
Right.
You know, right. Before that, I can say that, and I ain't perfect now. But the key is to strive for perfection, and you know that's the new goal in life. That's the everyday goal of life. That's what, you know. So at that time is when I decided to, you know, change my ways and my lifestyle patterns a lot.
Before we get into Black August, I got a quick question. Mm-hmm. You used to draw when I was young.
When did you start drawing?
When I was a kid, he drew. He drew when I was a kid.
Okay.
And I remember, I don't know if it was like Bugs Bunny or he was like drawing like one of the Pokemons or something. He went outside to go do something, you know, my uncle, you know, moms and them always was, you know, they did what they had to do to keep the family, you feel me, above float. Hopped in the game at a young age, you feel me? I watched. I was 10 years, he's 10 years older than me. That's my favorite uncle. So anyway, though, he was drawing something, bro. He go outside. I always want to be like him. So I picked up his pencil and I tried to draw on it and I messed it up. He came back in the house. I never seen him draw again. Did I mess up like
John Career.
you?
Hey
Drawing.
man, you know what? Yo was badass. You wasn't bad. You was just a young, curious, adventurous child. You know what I'm saying? So I try to stop saying that bad shit. You know what I mean? But his ass, boy, he wasn't allowed in my room. I was like, get your ass out of my room, boy. He poured coffee in my fish tank,
I
killed
just
all
wanted
my
to
fish.
feed him.
Hell no.
I thought it was the food. I just wanted to feed him. I was young. Bro.
Put the little coffee grounding. Oh, okay.
Put a virus on my computer.
Nigga want to porn on that motherfucker?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah, to be.
Oh wait. Yeah, I was.
For
Yeah,
sure
I
had to
was.
be.
I
For sure.
Let's get back.
Yep.
So
Roll
I
them over there. Mocha.
that one's recording.
Yep.
Okay. So I want to get back into let's talk about the day with George Jefferson and San Rafael Courthouse.
Yeah, so it was Jonathan Jackson.
Oh, Jonathan Jackson.
Yes, sir. Yes, indeed. Okay, so you talking about 1970?
Yes.
August. It's about August 1970.
Mhm.
August 7th, 1970. So yeah, that day right there. Black August, which we'll get into shortly, was founded in the name and memory of that day, among a few other days, which we'll get into shortly as well, right? Jonathan Jackson was the younger brother of George Jackson, and so I would say let's get into George Jackson first.
Okay. Let's get into George Jackson.
Okay, so George Jackson was he was a brother that was in prison in the 60s for a $70 robbery. It was supposed to be given 1 year, it's 1 year to life. In those days, you can get 1 year to life in prison. And so they sentenced him to 1 year to life in prison. George Jackson did time in Soledad prison, San Quentin prison. And I believe there's a few other prisons that he touched. But so George Jackson, at the time when he went in prison, right? George Jackson was running with this he joined this group called the Wolfpack. And Wolfpack was about everything, man. They was the Wolfpack was in everything, man. They was the ones that was running around prison terrorizing shit, taking shit and flipping shit, tearing shit up. It was going up and down, you know what I'm saying, behind, Wolfpack. They was with the shit. But, the thing with the Wolfpack is in those days, they wasn't politically oriented. They weren't a politically oriented group of men. So George Jackson, among those fellas around that time had ended up. George was always getting, he was tough. George when he was a hard hitter. You know what I mean? And George happened to always end up in the hole, in solitary confinement. So during those times in the hole in solitary confinement, what you read, George would study and he would educate himself about certain things, social, political, areas of life and things like that. And so George his mentality began to change once he began to become more aware of what he was going through on an environmental level and a social level and things like that. He started to learn more about racism. He started to learn more about the politics. You know what I mean? And that was around the time that the Panthers emerged in North Oakland in 1966. You know what I'm saying? With Huey P. Newton, the co-founder Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. And so, George began to learn more about the Panther Party. Him and Huey P. Newton became real familiar with each other. Huey P. Newton had ended up delegating him as the Field Marshal General of the Black Panther Party in those days because he was impressed by, the articulation and eloquence of George Jackson. George Jackson was beginning to get a lot of political attention in there because he began to speak and, he began to speak and and talk about the injustices and the things that was taking place between the racist oppressors and the police and blacks during that time of the Revolutionary Black Power days. Right. And George began to educate brothers in prison as well. So he was a good organizer. And the reason why a lot of the brothers, some of the hardest, motherfuckers in prison around, excuse my language, I got that MS shit bad. But a lot of the cats they would admire George and they would look up to him and listen to what he had to say because he was a thinker and he was the brains of everything. You know what I mean? So George, and this is why the system, CDCR, California Department of Corrections or whatever, didn't like George so much because of his charisma and his ability to bring those brothers together in prison. And this was around the time where CDC administration and corrupt prison guards and stuff was trying to use the white boys and the Mexican mafia against the blacks. So that during those days, they was using the Aryan Brotherhood, the Mexican mafia, which is also known as the Emmy and stuff like that, against blacks because blacks was becoming too strong in prison and they were starting to take a militant stance against, racism and things like that and police killings. While, guards was killing brothers back in those days, shooting, brothers would get into riots with white boys or, the Mexicans and stuff like that. The guards would intentionally pick blacks off on purpose and not shoot at the other race segments, right? And so George began to, bring brothers together. Like we need to, unite and to come together to fight against these oppressors and what they doing. And he began to understand what was going on an economical level in society. You know what I'm saying? He began to educate brothers about classism, economic oppression and exploitation, capitalist oppression and things like that. And so these were subjects that a lot of brothers wasn't really aware of, kind of like, you know what I'm saying? And even if they were aware of them, they couldn't really articulate and understand these things, you know what I'm saying? And nobody had a balanced perspective of what a lot of these things meant and what it looked like on a social level. They just knew that, you know what I'm saying, we was have-nots and we ain't got shit. Right. And the world is unfair and it's racist and it's unequal. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of people didn't really understand what was going on a social level. You know what I mean? So George was the type of cat who learned and studied himself enough to be able to articulate this stuff to the masses. So he came across George met other cats that was in prison who he called the gorillas. And not gorillas like the animal gorilla, but, gorilla. Gorilla there's a word that means little war.
For the U?
Well, it's spelled GUERRILLA.
Wow, that's where that came from.
Yes, sir. And so these, and what it meant is, these was brothers who was educated about guerrilla warfare. And these is, cats who had, studied strategy, had studied tactics, and, they were educated. They were social scientists, you know what I mean? And so they was about health, working out. They pushed and promoted and advocated Black unity, Black revolutionary nationalism and things like that, right? And so these brothers is the ones who embraced George and really got him on that page. You know what I mean? And so their whole thing was to transform the criminal mentality into a more revolutionary mentality. And the purpose behind that was because the only thing that living a life of criminality has done for us is keep us in the same boat and prevent us from being able to progress and advance. You know what I'm saying? So as long as they can they can demoralize you and call you a criminal, they can keep doing what they do, throwing us in the system, keeping us in prison, you know what I'm saying, separating us from our families, keeping us in the lowest wage paying jobs in society and things like that, right? You know what I mean? Because it'll keep us behind social economically, right? And so the reason why they wanted to educate to the brothers and organize the brothers around a common goal and a cause was because they wanted you to understand that, look, what we doing out here ain't serving us no purpose. It's only helping them to dominate us and to keep us in the lowest positions in society, right? And so they knew this. They like the prison administration knew this about George and the reason why they hated his guts. They even tried to assassinate George countless of times, several times in prison. You know what I'm saying? They would George's character was so respected, right? He was the type of brother that even the white boys, some of the white boys respected. You know what I mean? And there was this one Aryan Brotherhood cat who came to inform George. He was like, "Look, George, man, the guards are trying to have me to come kill you." And they was like, "Man, if I can take you out, you know what I'm saying, they can try to, push for my release." And so, George, they feared George Jackson because his mentality and his ability to organize the masses and shit. So Jonathan Jackson, which is his little brother, who used to come and visit George often in prison and things like that. And so when they would have visits, they would have discussions about, guerrilla warfare. They would have discussions about, the politics, the things that was going on, the theories and stuff like that, certain subjects and books that they would read by various authors and things like that. And they would have discourse and share discussions about a lot of the things that the Black Panther Party had going on, a lot of things that they was up against out there. And Jonathan Jackson, out of the love for his brother, you know what I mean, continued. He would study on his own out there. He was up under, people like Angela Davis. Angela Davis took him up under his wing and shit like that. And they would, they would study and they would build out there on their own, right? And so George Jackson, right? This is what led up to the August 7th movement, the event where Jonathan Jackson went to the San Rafael Marin County Courthouse and attempted to free his comrade. This is what led up to that. So on, I believe it was, don't quote me because sometimes you forget, I be studying so much. But on January 13th, 19, I believe it was 70, I believe, in Soledad Owing Yard, it was a fight over some territory or something like that. It was either a punching bag or something like that, right? So it was 3 brothers on the yard that day: W.L. Nolan, Albert Miller, and Cleveland Edwards. And they was out in the yard by themselves, and it was like 8 white boys out there. And so a fight broke out between them and the white boys. They had the upper hand despite they shortage of numbers, you know what I mean, compared to the white boys. And when the guard began to shoot, and when he started shooting, he killed W.L. Nolan, and he killed the other 2 brothers, Cleveland Edwards and Albert Miller. And the only white boy that got struck was by a ricochet. He got struck in his nuts by a ricochet. So George Jackson, in hearing this, W.L. Nolan, Cleveland Edwards, and Albert Miller were some of George's comrades and his mentors. W.L. Nolan, particularly, was George's mentor. He was one of those ones that was, kind of educating George about guerrilla warfare views and, politics and things like that, right? And so upon hearing this, George and them was like, man, these motherfuckers got to answer for this because they can't keep doing this to us. You know what I'm saying? Every time something takes place between us and one of these other racial segments like the whites or the Mexicans and stuff, which the CDCR uses against us, they killing us. And so after hearing the non-guilty verdict of the police guard who was responsible for killing the 3 brothers on the yard, supposedly George and William Christmas and James McClain went and found the guard on the tier, did what they did, and they ended up finding the guard, a few tiers down, dead. Threw him over, you know what I'm saying, things like that. And so George Jackson and them was on trial for this. They accused George because they was like the CDC administration was like, well, y'all the only ones could have did it because basically y'all the only ones around here on this political black militant organizational thing, you know what I'm saying, movement, hype and all that, right? And so they had George and them standing trial, pending trial for that. And so George's thing was, they had a lot of interviews. They had the Soledad brother. They called them the Soledad brothers. The Soledad brothers defense committee, right? And they would interview George about it and ask him, you know what I'm saying, like, look, man, what is your strategy for defense? How do you want to defend this thing? Man, George was like, well, I don't want to deny it because we can't let these pigs think that every time they kill us, they don't have to answer for it. He was like, why would I deny something that we should be willing to sacrifice our lives to do in the name of our comrades who was killed unjustly by these people, you know what I'm saying? So George was on trial for this. Jonathan Jackson was like, man, basically Jonathan Jackson was like, man, I'm ready to keep this revolution off, bro. You know what I mean? My comrades, I want to go free my comrades. I need to go get my comrades up out of this prison system. This shit need to happen now. You know what I mean? Jonathan Jackson, he was supposed to be assisted by, another group. There's different stories, you know what I mean? Like the Panthers supposed to assist him in this escape, but never showed up or whatever. But Jonathan Jackson, went to the Marin County Courthouse, San Rafael, on August 7th. He took a van, he had a trench coat, he had an AK-47 shotgun, pistol. And this was at the time before they was really, thoroughly searching. This is some of the shit that kind of like motivated them to start doing that, compelled them to start doing that. You know what I mean? Metal detectors, you can't get in there now with no motherfucking metal. You know what I mean? Right. But so Jonathan Jackson, he was a young brother, man, young, hazel-eyed, you know what I'm saying, light-skinned brother, man. But his heart, his spirit, you know what I'm saying, was that of a warrior, though, and a gorilla. So he went up in there, you know what I mean? And so when they called court, for some reason, George wasn't there that day. And when they called the court session and stuff, James McClain and William Christmas end up, coming out and being heard, I guess, for the day or whatever it was about. I don't know if it was preliminary hearing or what. But so after they came out, Jonathan Jackson, he come up out the coat with the things. He like, I'm taking over now. And he handed his comrades a gun. He was like, man, let's go. They took a shotgun and they tied it to they taped it to the judge neck. They took him hostage. The assistant district attorney took him hostage and another court official. And they walked out. They had their guns in hand. You could find pictures of it. Y'all can probably use pictures of it to, show people what we talking about. And Jonathan Jackson told him like this, y'all can pull y'all pictures out. Y'all can pull y'all cameras out. We are the revolutionaries. Simple as that. And they walked out. They had the judge with the shotgun taped around his head. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this to be promoting any type of, mutinous shit, like, what I mean, insurrection and shit or nothing like that, you know what I mean? But in those times, they had pushed us to the brink of revolution. Mm-hmm. And at those times, brothers was like, shit, either we just throw our lives away or throw our lives into the revolution. We damn both ways, but if it's gonna be blood, it's gonna be blood on both sides. Right. And that was their philosophy. You know what I mean? So, they attempted to escape. So they took everybody they had hostage, got up in a yellow van, and somehow the authorities had been tipped off. They don't know how, but these motherfuckers was everywhere. They was everywhere. You know what I mean? And so during their attempt to try to escape, to try to drive away, thinking that since they had hostages that the authorities wouldn't shoot. But they'll spare no lives in a situation like that. And they'll even kill their own, you know what I'm saying, if it means, prevent a slave or what you call it, a fugitive from getting away. You know what I'm saying? They're just not gonna allow that to happen. You know, a part of them maintaining their dominance and control over thing is keeping people in line and letting people know that, you know what I mean, there is no escape from this system. You know what I'm saying? They want to make it impossible for that. You know, so the last thing gonna do, you got their hostages or not, is let you, escape and succeed, because that right there would be an example, you know what I'm saying, that can create a whole chain of events just like that. You know what I'm saying? Cats say, well, damn, they did it.
Come on.
You know what I'm saying? Let's go up.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that was the last thing that could happen. So before Jonathan Jackson and them were able to make it out the parking lot, they opened up fire. They switched cheese the whole van. You know what I mean? Everybody died except Ruchell McGee, which was one of the brothers who also attempted to flee with them and escape with them. And the assistant district attorney. Everybody else died. Jonathan Jackson, James McClain.
They killed the judge?
Yeah. He was in the van. They lit the van up.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Wow.
And so Jonathan Jackson went there under the impression that, his brother was going to be there, which is
Right.
George Jackson. He was his thing was, he was a serious revolutionary. He was only 17 years old at the time of his death. But he was well educated, very articulate, and very understood when it came to revolution and the social material factors of what was going on in that time on a social, cultural, and historical level. You know what I mean? But very sharp, and it wasn't to a lot of us. We regard him as a fallen comrade, and that being a victory, not because he didn't make it out and he didn't succeed with that, but it's the example, and it was it showed us that sometime in the name of liberation, in the name of our self-respect, our self-dignity, and our survival as a people, sometimes we got to be willing to put our lives on the line.
Man.
You know what I'm saying? And people are like, well, man, I don't want to sacrifice for the people. I'll be like, man, we sacrificing all that. We dying anyway.
Already. Just taking them off like that during the fights and
like
shit?
like we've been sacrificing.
Right.
Doing life in prison.
Right.
We're getting shot down out here on the streets.
Come on.
You know what I'm saying? So why, when it comes to a real cause, if all of a sudden cats is, paralyzed by the fear of losing their life. Yeah, you know what I mean? We've been dying since our people been dying since the past, since slavery, and the hoods from drugs to guns,
Right.
and police murder. You know what I'm saying? We dying in the pen. You know what I'm saying? So I'll be looking at some cats and I'll be like, man, you got rods all up and down your legs from being mowed down in the streets with choppers. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes to this movement, you get scared and stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's different.
I'll be like, man, that's crazy. You know what I'm saying? And some cats, man, they done done some shit.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right,
They done
right.
put down some
Bodies,
work or whatever.
right.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, when it comes to this type of sacrifice, what's the difference?
Right.
Because a lot of cats don't understand the subtle, unconscious psychological conditions that we suffer from. Like,
It's deeper, right.
yeah,
Right.
they've embedded a deep-seated fear into our minds, into our psyche.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it comes from what we've seen our ancestors go through. Like what they did to the Panthers, the terror that they had enacted upon the Panthers and stuff like that. So people don't forget that. They're like, man, I don't want to be, I don't want them to come kicking down my door and killing me and throwing me in the prison. But I'd be like, shit, this happens anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Inevitable almost.
Yeah, so, but it's, they've embedded a deep-seated fear in us, you know what I'm saying? There's a white fear of obliteration and annihilation that we don't understand that we got. So black people, suffering from it, and impelled and paralyzed by these ideas, these certain ideas, won't do things that they think will agitate, or make these people upset. You know what I mean? Like if it means organizing and coming together, you know what I mean, to do for ourselves on a positive level.
Right,
It ain't always
right.
got to be
It
like
ain't,
let's
right.
make a revolution and let's overthrow the
Right.
you know what I'm saying, the
Right.
white man and the oppressor and stuff, because a lot of our enemies come from our own people. You know what I'm saying? But it's about coming together on a positive and constructive note to do better for ourselves, bro.
Period.
You know what I'm saying? It ain't to build for ourselves. You know what I mean? To start channeling our non-human and human resources toward building a strong nation for ourselves. You know what I mean? So we can become a self-determined people. You know what I mean? So, because for a long time we've been controlled, dominated by another people. And so liberation is about reversing that condition and changing that condition for the better to where we be able to determine our own destiny. We be able to do for ourselves, to provide for ourselves, to produce and distribute our own wealth and to maintain and manage and own our own land and wealth. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what the whole Black Power movement and politics was about. But Black people, what was done through us in slavery has intimidated a lot of Black people from getting in accord with that. So anything associated or dealing with activism and stuff like that, you got a lot of people that's kind of like, nah, man, I don't want to offend, might be, or, every time we lift our head, they're going to cut it off. These type of ideas still exist in 2025 and you wouldn't believe it.
Right.
You know what I mean? George Jackson, Jonathan Jackson, and the rest of his comrades, which we'll get into shortly when we get a little bit more into Black August, were those who were unbothered and unmoved by those type of fears. You know what I'm saying? And they was, in those days, in the 60s and 70s, they attempted to bring the revolution to a maturity, a thing that really never, took place.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they was about blood, just like the oppressor was. The oppressor is always salivated, you know what I'm saying, over the blood of our people. You know what I mean? And they laughed and they celebrated the death of our people at the same time. And everybody knows it's not no secret that a lot of their descendants are still living off the wealth of our people. And that's why they have so much generational wealth, you know what I mean? And so Black August, also known as Agosti Weusi. Agosti Weusi is Black August in Swahili. Black August is a commemoration. It's a memorial month to commemorate the fallen brothers, comrades, and ancestors who made supreme sacrifice in the name of liberation and Black power and things like that, right? So the reason why it's a commemoration, because we commemorate those who put their lives on the line within prison and abroad for Black liberation and things like that, right up against political, racial, economic oppression. And so Black August Memorial is similar to, let's say, Memorial Day. You know what Memorial Day is, right? When they on Memorial Day in America, they commemorate those who lost their lives at war for this country, right? So Black August it's exclusive to our people, and it's about it's a memorial month to commemorate those who lost their lives for us, for our people, the ones who put their lives on the line for us. So to commemorate is to be mindful. And so Black August is about remembering the remembrance of those who lost their lives for us.
Right.
And so during Black August, it's a 31-day tradition. And so throughout Black August, we fast from sun up to sundown. And so, it's Black August, it enhances and it promotes self-discipline. So since our ancestors made a supreme sacrifice for us, throughout Black August, we make a small sacrifice by giving up something throughout the day in commemoration of our ancestors and our comrades and things like that. So certain we conduct certain activities, or we engage in certain activities like studying 3 to 5 hours a day, and not engaging in entertainment, not indulging in entertainment. If there's an addiction that you might have, right, like it could be a drug addiction of some sort. You know what I mean? It could be cigarettes. You know what I mean? Which is just another form of drugs. You could be suffering from alcoholism. Throughout August, what you would do is, to work on your self discipline, to work on your health, and you would give that up. You would give that up out either throughout the day or throughout the whole month, whatever you think you can handle. You know what I mean? And the fasting is something that helps you to develop a willpower. It helps you develop the ability to deny your fleshly desires, because a lot of our hindrances in lives, a lot of our problems in lives come from the lack of self-control and the lack of moderation and things like that. Sometimes we begin to indulge in or overindulge in things that are injurious and deleterious to our health. So throughout Black August, and to reverse and undo those type of negative and unproductive behaviors and habits, we would do the opposite, which is the more positive thing, which is to work on denying ourselves and abstaining from certain things that tend to, kind of like hold us back a little bit. Certain things that tend to be harmful for us on a spiritual level, on a physical level, and on a mental level. So part of giving up entertainment, practicing on fasting and eating less and stuff like that, and studying more is what's going to help you to enhance your self-discipline and in remembrance and commemoration of those who helped us, who taught us that. You know what I'm saying? Though the epitome of those, you know what I'm saying? The ones who strive for perfection on a daily basis. And that's what Black August is formed around those principles. You know what I mean? So that's why throughout Black August for 31 days, we engage in these progressive and constructive activities. It's a Black August is not only about commemorating the brothers and sisters who lost their freedom and even their lives for us, but it's about teaching us about the self-discipline that they had to have in order to, be as strong as they was spiritually and mentally at the same time. They had to be educated. They had to be healthy. They had to be strong. You know what I mean? And they had to lack fear. And they had to have self-control, self-respect, self-love, dignity, self-appreciation, and things like that. Those are the only things that can create a strong enough foundation for, people to be a strong, not only individual, but a strong nation. You know what I'm saying? And so Black August reminds us of the appreciation and, other principles that we need to and shall cultivate in order to be a strong people, and even for other people to respect us. Because we don't respect ourselves, how anybody else gonna respect us? Right. Black August is about reminding us of that self-respect that we need to share within our community, you know what I mean, and in our families, most importantly, you know.
Where did this origin of Black August come from? Like why August? Is it because of the situation that happened with the brothers? Or
So that's part of it. And coincidentally, right, a lot of the brothers who we commemorate throughout Black August,
right,
namely J. Joker Katari Garden, William Christmas, Alvin Miller, Jonathan Jackson, James McClain, George Jackson, among many other unsung soldiers, where the deaths of these comrades took place in August, which is it's a cold coincidence. And throughout history, right, a lot of the most memorable events when it came to insurrections and revolts by Black people against the racist slave oppressor, slave master, whatever, right, took place throughout August. There are over 250 revolts and insurrections recorded throughout the history from 1619 on up. So the year 1619 is when the first slave ship supposed to have landed in Jamestown, on the shore of Jamestown, Virginia.
Right.
And that that ship was holding his cargo was slaves. And at that time is when our history in America began. And so, since that time, people think that, we were just sitting there, taking whips and, saying get beaten. No, you don't hear about the militant side, of the story. And that's why, they say history goes to the winner. They don't want to tell us, they don't want to teach us about the Black Liberation Army. They don't want to teach us about the Revolutionary Action Movement. Right. Robert F. Williams. They don't want to teach us about Nat Nathaniel Turner, Nat Turner, 1831, Jamestown, Virginia, rose up, him and a group of other slaves went, in an attempt to free themselves and liberate themselves from slavery, went and killed dozens of slaves family throughout the night. They don't tell you about that. Yeah. Right. But it's a lot of events throughout history that took place like that. Where we were rising up against the oppressor and we were willing to put our own lives and freedom on the line. We were willing to shed blood in order to achieve and to accomplish that self-determination and that freedom and that liberation. You know what I mean? And so Black August was found in the name of that. You know what I mean? It was the tradition of Black August, cultural tradition, political intentions was created in the name of these events. And because it was about the resistance. It wasn't about, just for the simple fact that we were willing up to, get violent. It was about the resistance that was required in order to survive. Right. Because if you don't resist, you'll just be overcome. They'll continue to prey on you. They'll continue to exploit you. They'll continue to enslave you. They'll continue to abuse you, to take undue advantage of you. They'll continue to trick you. They'll continue to do whatever they gotta do, if you let them. So if you don't resist, how can you survive? They own theories, what is called survival of the fittest, But Black August is about the resistance and how through resistance you can make advancements. How through resistance you might need to survive by resisting. You know what I mean? And so it's in commemoration of those who set the example and set the tone of the work that has to be done for our generations to come. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes we have to learn from the past in order to understand what we need to do in the presence in order to survive. And remembering that they made the supreme sacrifice with their life and their freedom in many instances. With their time. They could have did anything, but they educated. They wanted to set the example. They wanted to teach one. You know what I mean? Each one teach one. They chose to do that. You know what I mean? They could be like, I ain't got nothing to do with that shit, but instead, they resisted. They joined the struggle. They joined the movement. So Black August is a commemoration of those who made that sacrifice, and we pay homage to their ancestors. And, the other revolutionary brothers and sisters who made that sacrifice. And so Black August is in August because coincidentally that happened to be the month throughout history where most events of this kind had taken place.
Right.
Steve, I never knew that. It started in 1979 and the San Quentin Adjustment Center in a community of outside brothers and sisters who came together to put it together to develop the principles and the whole structure and foundation and platform before Black August was about. And since then, it's been alive. A lot of Black people don't know about it because compared to other traditions, religions, and customs, it's pretty young. It's only 50 or 46 years old. You know what I mean?
True.
Yeah, young. So, a lot of people in the Black community don't really know about it. And then there's half of them that do know about it, but they would say, well, Black August, man, that's something that's, that's some prison shit, or or only prison gangs do that, or only the Black Gorilla family, you know what I'm saying, do that, or and so that's because they don't really understand the cultural intentions, background, and history behind Black August and what it was founded of the principles it was founded upon. It never was about, what I'm saying, you from the Bay, or you from LA, or you this or you that, you know what I'm saying? It's about it's for Black people within America, in prison, and abroad. You know what I'm saying? Throughout the African diaspora. You know what I mean? It's not about, whether you were part of this movement. I don't like to call them gangs. I call them either street nations or, I call them tribes. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what we is at the end of the day. They demoralize us and call us gangs. Right. You know what I mean? So they can take our purpose away from us. They can take all the credibility and all the legitimacy away from what some brothers organize themselves around. Because if you gonna call us a gang, you got to call yourself a gang too. Because everything you got, you plundered, you stole it, you murdered for it. Right. You know what I'm saying? You mobbed for it. You did everything for it. You know what I'm saying? That was illegitimate and wrote it up like it was legal and lawful and divine and ordained and all that little shit. You know what I mean? So, they good with that pen and them words. You know what I mean? Right. That how you questioning yourself, But the good thing about, learning about this stuff, learning the psychology behind it, learning the sociology behind it, learning the politics behind it, you know what I mean, and everything else is that you won't be fooled by those notions, those incorrect notions and things like that when it comes, to, our people in society and, the government and everything else. And, Black August helps us remember the brothers and sisters who woke us up to, a lot of these facts. You know what I mean? Not just a whole bunch of, mumbo jumbo, and not just a whole bunch of clamoring and complaining and all that. It ain't about that. It's about educating our people, to a purpose, you know what I'm saying? And understanding that, we have our own. We have things that are exclusive to African descendants or African people. You know what I mean? Black August is one of those things. It's a tradition, and it's distinct from a celebration or a holiday. It's nothing of that type. Black August is something that reminds us that, look, if you got bad habits that you need to work on that is hindering you from being able to progress, you know what I mean, to succeed, to prevail, to win, to be able to provide for your family, being able to stay free, you know what I'm saying, so you can be present in your family. My orientation and familiarity with, Black culture and things like that because of my mama. But, what has it done for us as a people? You know, and if you want to compare, I ain't gonna go into statistics and stuff like that because I wouldn't call myself a scholar of the Census Bureau and all that.
You a scholar, bro. You a scholar, man.
But what do we have? You know what I mean? Compared to these other people on a global level. You know what I mean? And so Black people of the world, we still have a lot of work to do. You know what I mean? Because we've been preyed on from every single direction. Right. You know what I mean? In our communities, you know what I mean, with our young brothers, you know what I mean, suffering from the Black on Black killings, the imprisonment. We constitute majority of the prison population wherever you go. That's a problem. Right. That's a problem. This is a problem statement because this is where the work needs to be done. You know what I'm saying? In our communities. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? How many people know about Black August?
Right.
Quick to, like my mama said one time, she said, man, son, it's Labor Day. All these niggas out here celebrating, ain't none of them got no job. You know what I'm saying? Like we quick to celebrate some shit. And so what the purpose of Black August, it's not to, not to disparage and to belittle. Because like I said, I was there. You know what I mean, at one point. But the purpose of Black August is let us know, don't. We have something that's meaningful. Don't go just, celebrating shit and not know what you celebrate. You know what I mean? Right. Don't just do shit because everybody else do. They been trying to make us follow. You know what I mean? They've been trying to, get us to spend our money with them, our time with them, our mind with them. You know what I mean? Everything else. That it's time to take that back. Right. You know what I'm saying? And to start, even down to who we spend our money with, what we spend our time on. You know what I mean? Start making that stuff, focus on putting that your time and your energy, toward things that's going to enhance the quality of your family life, your personal life, and our community. You know what I mean? And the Black August is one of those traditions that guides us and instructs us and keeps us in alignment with those type of principles.
For sure.
And things like that.
Shit.
That shit was cool. You got no other questions?
Oh, yeah, you gotta bring them home now. Bring it home. Right, you gotta wrap it up, nigga. That was cool, nigga. Like,
Nah, but I want to say though, so I wrote a essay on Black August, right? So I got to write, and anybody who are interested in learning more about Black August and what it's about, kind of getting a brief historical analysis on it, they can visit my website at
I'll put that link in the video.
maarifasportraits.com.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yes, and they can call me at 510-272-7342. You know what I mean? I'll send you a free copy of the PDF and share it with your brothers, share it with your partners. You know what I mean? Share it with your family, share it with whoever you want to, but it's to disseminate and spread the knowledge.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because we carry the torch, man, and after we get done, we got to pass the torch. You know what I mean? That's how we do it. That's how our ancestors did it. You know what I mean? Right. They united. They came together. They worked together. You know what I mean? And that's what we got to do. You know what I mean?
That's the only way to do it.
Because it's I know a lot of cats don't like politics, but everything is political in this day and age.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it really ain't no escaping. You know what I mean? So it ain't about kumbaya. It ain't about holding hands and singing kumbaya, man. It's about bringing brothers together, man. And I'm tired of, seeing us having to suffer the most, you know what I mean, from the social ills and the disorganization, you know what I mean, and the imbalanced perspective among our people, because we affected the most. Every time they want to gentrify some shit, who's affected by it the most in the worst way? Right. You know what I mean? Anytime they want to start taking jobs and stuff, who's affected by it the most in the worst way? You know what I mean? It seems like, it always hits us the hardest. We always got the shortest end of the stick.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, the whole purpose behind, being aware of, the political intentions of traditions, customs, and practices like Black August, you know what I mean, is to strengthen, to unite us, to make us stronger, to build us, to encourage us, you know what I mean, to empower us at the same time. You know what I mean? And this is the type of stuff we need to be promoting and teaching and educating about tradition in our families. Right. You know what I mean? Sure. It's non-commercial. It's not for everybody. This is ours. You know what I mean? So learn about George Jackson, learn about Jonathan Jackson, learn about Queen Mother Audley Moore, learn about the Republic of New Africa, the PGRNA, the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa. Learn about their pursuit for a Black nation state and independence and secession from the, the American government. Learn about why they started. Just everything you can. You know what I mean? Because this is what gives us the knowledge and the guidance on how to continue to build ourselves, as a people, to give us the principles that we need to enact in order, and what we need to cultivate in order to progress and to advance and keep ourselves from being preyed on, because it is a global cash struggle for power and control. You know what I'm saying? And as people, we gotta uplift each other, man. We should feel remorseful, if we gotta do something to another Black man or another Black woman. I ain't saying it's cool to do it to other people, because all Blacks ain't our brothers and all whites ain't our enemies at the same time. George said that, but at the same time, though, we gotta start representing better, doing better for ourselves, and setting better example. That's what Black August is about.
Sure shit.